CALPADS Error Resolution, CERT-97, Missing Title I Targeted Assistant Program Records. As always, the first step when troubleshooting any error is to consult the CALPADS error list. Here we have a copy of the error list from the Excel format. The first two columns on the left, the error number and the error name. CERT-97, Missing Title I Target Assistant Program Records, are used strictly for reference. When you're trying to decipher the error list or understand what you need to do to fix the error, you need to read the error description and the suggested resolution and the fields validated when there are fields validated. So let's look at the error description. No student program records with an education program code of 122 have been submitted for a school that received Title I Part A targeted assistance funding in the reporting year. That's what missing Title I targeted assistant program records means. Now, let's look at the suggested resolution. First, there's the understanding the error part. The school received Title I Part A targeted assistance for the reporting year. That means the school received funds, but there are no student program records with education program code 122 submitted for students at the school. That means there are no records in CALPADS with the program code of 121 for any students in the school. The suggested resolution is to submit the appropriate student program records, program 122, for students in the NCLB Title I Part A targeted program. Okay, so CALPADS is expecting program 122 records because the school was paid to support students in the Title I Part A program. However, there are no records. Kind of vague if you're unfamiliar with Program 122 or Title I. So let's look at where we can find more resources to give us some background information. So you can always go to the CALPADS code set to find out what Program 122 is. Title I Part A Basic Targeted has a definition, and it says indicates participation in Title I Part A program, improving basic programs operated by local education agency assistance program. And then we have the Education Service Title Part A Basic, because every program 122 record will also need the Education Service reported as well. As you can see, there's several different instruction codes. So these are the services that a student may be receiving: math, language arts, science, social studies, so on and so forth. So that's what you would find in the code set, kind of understanding the program and a conditional field validated. There's always a CALPADS file specifications. If you go to the program tab under education program code, you can see we've highlighted here item 3, schools receiving Title I school-wide funding for the reporting academic year should not submit Title I program records. So that's important for reporting in the reporting academic year. Participation in Title I school-wide programs are derived from the school's cumulative primary enrollment count. So basic targeted schools should submit program 122 records. Schools operating Title I school-wide programs should not submit individual records. We are going to use the cumulative enrollment count for primarily enrolled students to derive that number. That's important information. And then the Education Service academic year, it just has to be populated if you're using program 122 records. So that's another field that's conditionally validated. You have to tell us the student service and the year in which they're receiving the service, which should match the academic year you're reporting for. The CalPADS Data Guide is another great source of information. The program section in the data guide has information. As you can see here, we have the name of the program, Title I Part A. The program's recommended start date represents the first day the student was identified as participating in the program. Might be the first day of enrollment. The program end date represents the date the student ceased participating in the school. Could be the last day of school. And should the LEAs close these records at the end of the year? The recommendation is yes. The record should be closed annually, resubmitting the following academic year. So you have guidance on how to report the program. It might indicate why you have no records, because they were all closed out at the end of last year. So you would have had to submit them this year, unless of course you have a school-wide program. And then always check the CalPADS Communications. You can see here that there were 3 different flash messages referencing school-wide programs and targeted assistance over the years, spelling out CERT097. The flash messages is always a great place to look for information. And then you can always go to the CDE's web portal, look up Title I Part A, you'll come here. And if you don't know who your students are that are receiving services, this would give you information on who's eligible and what students to look at. So you can see students that might be eligible for Title I Part A would be students who are no older than 21, students who are not yet at grade level for which the LEA provides free public education. This includes students that could be preschool or younger than kindergarten, younger than first grade. Down here, it gives you groups of students to look at. Students who are economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, migrant students, English learners are eligible for Title I Part A. Head Start preschool students are eligible. Again, migrant students spelled out. Neglected delinquent students, homeless students. So there's a broad group of students eligible for these funding. So if you're unfamiliar with who's receiving targeted assistance at your school or eligible for Title I, these are the group of students you could look for to find out. Of course, if you're running a school-wide program, you're not going to be submitting records. And then also on the CDE web portal is information about the Consolidated Application Reporting System. This is important because if your school is running a school-wide program, it's reported in CARS, the Consolidated Application and Reporting System. There's information about how to navigate in CARS, current year program instructions. There's also on the same webpage the login to CARS. So, like we said, we pointed out several times, schools operating school-wide programs should not submit Program 122 records. You may have to go into CARS to resolve your CERT097 error, or someone with access to CARS at your LEA may have to do it. Right. And so now, having reviewed the resources that help us understand and resolve the CERT-97 error, let's look at causes for it. Right. We have two causes. School received Title I funds and failed to submit Title I Part A records for the academic year, or the schools operated a Title I school-wide program and failed to certify the school-wide program status in CARS. So now let's look at a demonstration of how to resolve the CERT-97 error in CALPADS. Okay, so we're on the certification detail screen and we are looking at the CERT-97. While most errors in CALPADS now are data discrepancies or CDDs, certification data discrepancies if they're on the certification detail screen, there are a few CERT errors that remain and these are tied to the snapshot. If we click show, we can see the three schools triggering the error and we have a link to the error message. Here it is already open. CERT-97, missing Title I Targeted Assistant Program records. There's an error description. No student program records with the Education Program Code of 122 have been submitted for a school that received Title I Targeted Assistance funding for the reporting year. The school received Title I Part A Targeted Assistance for the reporting year, but there are no student program records for Program Code 122, which is essentially the same thing reworded. Submit the appropriate student program record to resolve it. It's important for you to know we have added additional information. A school that receives Title I Part A funds can operate one of two programs. They can be a school-wide program or a target assistance program. This is very important. School-wide programs do not trigger CERT-97 and CALPADS. There's a data file that's used to update all the schools in CALPADS, and if they're a school-wide program, this error will not trigger for them even if they receive Title I funding. If they are targeted, you have to provide us each student that receives information with the Program 122 Targeted Assistance School. And so we've added additional information to help you determine how to identify if the school is a school-wide program or not. That information is down here in the additional information, but we'll kind of walk you through it. All right, so one thing you can always do is find out more information. We're at the CDE web portal. You type in Title I Part A, and you can find the Title I Part A Targeted Assistance School Program webpage. And if you scroll down, it will give you an indication of the students eligible, right? And so you can see these students are no older than 21 and students who are not yet at grade level, which most likely could be 3 to 21. They're not yet at grade level age, but they're eligible, but they cannot be older than 21. There may be students who have been identified as failing or at risk. They can also be students who are economically disadvantaged. Locally, you have to keep a track of all the students who might be Title I Part A students. You've already received funding, so you should know who these students are. And then you can see you have migrant students and homeless students who may also be Title I students. So there's some background information about the program and who is eligible. In CALPADS, we submit the Program 122 record. going back to CalPADS, we have a school that has been identified as not having any record. So once you go to your student information system and identify who has participated in Title I Part A or who should be eligible for services, such as Chiron Santana, you'll go to the student details screen if you're not submitting a program record in a file, and you can confirm student program. This student has no Title I programs reported. So if I was using online maintenance, I would add a new record. So here we have the program code, and we're looking for 122. They're in alphabetical order. So Title I Part A basic targeted, and then a membership start date. So this is a participation program, so this should be yearly. For the purpose of this demonstration, we'll just go with the student's enrollment start date. Students still enrolled, so we're not adding a membership date. And then conditionally required for every Title I Part A basic record, for every Program 122 record, we have to populate the service code. So in addition to the education service code, we need an academic year, the education service academic year. Now we'll click post, and we'll just wait a moment and refresh the screen to make sure that the record populates. Okay, so we can see that the program 122 record was submitted for this student. The expectation is to submit this record for every services the student receives related to program Title I Part A, program 122 in CalPADS. So they may have multiple records in the same academic service year, but also for every student. The error triggers by school, not by student. So that one addition would resolve the error for ABC secondary alternative. However, you should report it for every student that's part of the program. Now, let's say that you're operating a school-wide program at ABC secondary and you get the CERT097 error. What could be the problem? And so if you're operating a school-wide program, that information comes from CARS, the Consolidated Application Reporting System. Okay, here we are. Here's a lot of information about cars. Here's a webinar explaining how to navigate, a user guide, and then current year program instructions, right? So populating the data in cars, here are the instructions. And to log in, you would just log in here. Now, we don't have access to cars. However, we did find a video and we can walk you through the process. Let me cue that up for you right now.
I'm working in the CARS test environment, so none of the data that I'm entering will be saved to the production database. And the primary purpose of the data and the LEAs is to demonstrate the general functionality and nuances of a form and may not comply with program requirements. Because a Joe consultant has access to multiple LEAs, I'll have to select an LEA from the list to view that LEA's content. So I've now switched to Victor Valley Union High, and for this LEA, Joe Consultant has all roles assigned. He has data entry representative, authorized representative, and the LEA user administrator. Data entry representative gives you access to the data entry forms. Authorized representative gives you access to certified data, and LEA user administrator gives you access to users. Regardless of whether you have access to multiple LEAs or not, when you log into an LEA, you'll automatically go to the Home tab. The Home tab displays current submissions and deadlines. So the Home tab and the Data Entry Forms tab are very similar, other than the Data Entry Forms tab will also display those forms that are still open and their deadline has passed. So if you'll notice that under 2016-17, there are a number of data collections with a status of certified and a deadline date of June 30th, 2016 that were not displayed on the Home tab. So these have been completed. All needed action has been addressed, taken care of, and they've been certified. So those fall off the Home tab and but are still available to be edited on the Data Entry Forms tab. If there is any reason whatsoever to make a change, they are still open for you and you can change it. Because it is after the deadline, if you do make a change to any of these certified data collections, we recommend that you contact the form contact listed to let them know that you've made a change, because it could have implications on data that has been published. Another difference between the Home tab and the Data Entry Forms tab is the Data Entry Forms tab allows you to filter by fiscal year, by program, and by status. So whether you work from the Data Entry Forms tab or the Home tab, that is your preference. And we strongly recommend that you work from the top down. There are a lot of forms that have data dependencies and certification dependencies. These dependencies could cross fiscal years. So if you work from the top down, you ensure that those data dependencies are met and certification dependencies are met. 2016-17 Title I Part A Notification of Authorization of School-Wide Program is similar to school student count actuals in that it is pre-populated with the prior fiscal year data. This form is required annually, so even though all of the schools are already in school-wide program and there's no changes, this form must be saved. This data is used by CALPADS later in the year when they do their end-of-year reporting. If you don't complete this form and save it and certify it, then CALPADS will treat all schools as targeted assistance. So it's very important that you do save and certify this form annually. So certification preview and the certified data tab only show those items that are certified or in draft. So just because everything that's displayed here is certified does not mean that you are done. You need to look at what is on your Home tab and what is on your Data Entry Forms tab and make sure that you take care of or review all of those forms that have a status of none. Until these are saved as draft, they will not display on these two tabs, on the Certification Preview or Certified Data tabs. When certifying your data collections, we strongly recommend that you don't wait to the due date. We get probably 70% of our submissions on the due date. So we strongly recommend that you complete all of the forms and certify them at the earliest possible point in time. So everything certified successfully. And I go back to my Home tab. Everything that I could complete has been completed, and I'm done at this point.
Okay, so it is imperative that if you're operating a school-wide program, you need to update that information in CARS so that it can be submitted to CalPADS in the file. You're not going to submit it, but there'll be a data transfer that the CDE does that will update all of the school information in the back end. And ABC Secondary, for example, will be identified as a school-wide program. This error will resolve. Once you update it in CARS, you can expect at least a week for that to be reflected in CalPADS. So you want to do that as soon as possible so that it does not impair your ability to certify by the deadline. So good luck. If you have any further questions, submit a service request. I'll see you next time.